Okay, I want to see where we are. I don't think that we've exhausted the questions. I know we will never exhaust the discussion about Barabbas and Jesus in reference to the crucifixion and how it relates to us now. However, I would like to ask if there are any questions or comments in regards to our previous discussions on that.
Yes, sir. I have a question.
Okay.
I appreciate the discussions we've had, although I'm still a little cloudy on some couple of things. I'm looking at Leviticus 16, and I'm just going to read a verse, and then I'm going to flip over to Hebrews for a minute. But chapter 16 of Leviticus, verse 7 and 8 says, "And he shall take the two goats and present them before the Lord in the doorway of the tent of meeting. And Aaron shall cast a lot for the two goats, one lot for the Lord and the other lot for the scapegoat." Okay, that's Leviticus. And I'm going to flip over here from Leviticus. Got too many bookmarks. Now, this is the one that kind of stemmed my question and where I'm coming from here. It says, and I'm in Hebrews 9, verses 16 and 17, okay?
Okay.
And it says, for where a covenant is, there must of necessity be the death of the one who made it. There must of necessity be the death of the one who made it. For a covenant is valid only when men are dead, but it is never enforced while the one who made it lives. So that tells me, and we've talked about some of this, and I'm going to repeat some stuff and kind of go along with me for a minute. We talked about some of this because what that says is nothing in the Old Testament was completely fulfilled. That's safe to say, right? Because there was no death with it. It was not a death with Moses. It was not a death with Abraham. So the fulfillment of this is the cross. You agree with me so far?
Okay.
The part I'm seeing here, a covenant, and I'm going to use myself as an example, as every man who's in search of truth. The covenant, and this it sounds simple, but it's something I had not really paid attention to. It requires two disciplines on my behalf. Because if I am to say that Jesus and Barabbas are part of the same coin, then I have to address both of those in so doing, in understanding this. One side addresses my soul, and the other side, I guess, my humanity. And I'm talking this out, so all this could be wrong. The funny thing is, when I look at that and we talk about what responsibility we would have as the scapegoat, but also, is it a requirement or does it require any responsibility at all on our part as the sin offering?
Can I back you up?
Please.
If you look at the word that's translated as covenant in Hebrews, it's different than the word that's translated as covenant in the Old Testament. In the Old Testament, the word covenant is used in relationship to someone pledging an allegiance or forming an alliance, right?
Okay.
In the case of Hebrew, it's used in reference to someone writing a will or making a testament to someone's inheritance after they're dead, or the inheritance to those who left behind, I should say.
Okay. That makes a huge difference. Because I'm looking at this and the word that I like here is the scapegoat is for atonement, and atonement speaks to a covering or to embrace something, and it is closely related to forgiveness and to pardon something. So it's talking about having a change of attitude towards something that was whatever the offensive thing was. So I don't know. I was trying to put those together and see where we are, because the atonement part kind of explains to me anyway what should happen to the scapegoat. And again, I'm talking it out, just trying to see this. This is the portion of it where, if you are truly doing this for mankind, you look at it and you recognize that because of my love, because of my closeness to the Creator, I desire atonement. I desire complete forgiveness for what I am seeing or what was done to man. Am I seeing that right, or help me out with that? I'm trying to see the two parts of this and how it comes together. And is there any further responsibility that we not only understand having a desire to move in one direction or another?
Well, Kippur, Yom Kippur is the Day of Atonement, right? Yom Kippur, Kippur.
Yes.
It's the Day of Atonement, and it speaks to reconciliation. So when you're talking about reconciliation, then there is action on your part to reconcile the differences that you had with someone or with someone, with people, and to make sure that you purge yourself of whatever it was that separated you or caused the issue in the beginning.
Okay.
See, you can't have true reconciliation without forgiveness. That's why both of them are so inextricably tied together.
Yeah. And I lost part of the understanding of that too, in not seeing the two different parts of the covenant, the two different meanings.
Yeah. So now you won't pull all that together?
Is Barbara or Kathy on the line? Y'all pull that together for me, somebody. Or Sheldon.
This is Barbara. I'm on the line, but I'm still getting the threads myself. The comment I would make, however, is that what the people were doing was a practice related to their behavior, and their behavior meaning sinful nature, and asking for forgiveness through atonement. And that was an earthly representation of the actual spiritual thing that had to occur. And the priests went into the temple, which is a symbol of the actual holy place. But Christ went into the very presence of Abun, and so with that happening, it disavowed the need for the physical symbolism that all the people did heretofore. Just as for us, we say that, where we are on our journey and on our path, prayer is different for us now than it was before. Prayer was a symbol of my speaking with Abun. But at this point, I am prayer. I have become prayer. I am, and so my speaking is not having to formally go into a place or take a position, a certain position, kneeling or whatever. It's a continual process of communication. So I didn't pull any of your threads together, but that was just my comment.
And the only thing, good morning, this is Kathy, and the only thing I would add to everything that's already been said is when it speaks of the death, a death must occur. The death does continue to occur because when I began to realize and understand who I am, the death of the old earthly me as I'm transforming into the spiritual me and understanding my relationship and being one with Abun, I let go of those entanglements. I allow all those entanglements that I'm involved in to die. And as a result of that, that is the death that continuously happens. And that's all I would add at this point.
Excellent point, Kathy. This is Barbara. That there's not a national sacrifices back in the day. We're all each individually responsible for our own relationship with the Creator. So excellent point.
Thank you. Yours was too.
Anyone else?
I would just add that's the exact thing that was just mentioned that I immediately thought about as well. Ron, when you mentioned that the death is necessary, the death being required and necessary, I saw it as being more spiritual and saying that in order for the covenant to be adhered to or walked into, for a lack of better words, that thing that existed in a sense before the covenant could not exist any longer because there was a transformation that was being taking place. Something.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah.
Anyone else? Because I want to ask you something else. But you say it, Ron, in a minute. Okay.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
Did I miss it? Did y'all ever say why a goat was used instead of any other animal?
A goat was used to lead sheep to the slaughter. And I don't know why they chose the goat for that particular purpose. Unless someone else, I'm hoping someone else has an answer to that, or it may just been simply because they were hard-headed. No, I'm serious. I'm teasing. I don't know.
They are harder headed than than sheep. Goats even eat differently. Sheep graze near to the ground, and goats are always got their heads up, looking up and looking up and trying to get twigs up and even standing up on things to get to they're just very curious animals, as opposed to the sheep, which keeps its head down basically and grazes where it will.
Because the reason why I say that too, because the Masons use goats in certain sacrifices, so it's just kind of, huh?
What are you talking about?
No, I'm just saying some of the stuff that I see where the Masons are using goats as sacrifice and doing other things. I don't delve into that, but I'm just saying it has to be something significant for the goat to be used.
Well, hey, y'all, how y'all doing? The significance of it may be, and this is very opinionated. The goat may need to be looked at metaphorically. You know, when Ron was talking, Ron said the word pardon. Ron said the word scapegoat in his reading. So the goat and sheep, you can develop a pretty decent argument of guilty versus the acquitted, or innocent versus guilty. So, you know, the goat can be whatever you want it to be. However, the goat may be a metaphoric standpoint of what Ron read. It could be a grizzly bear, but whatever it is, it's being used metaphorically. So I'm suggesting that that's what it's talking about. When a goat leads a sheep, you know the goat know the sheep don't know nothing. The goat is guilty of it, leading someone that does not know anything, and the sheep will be acquitted of it, or the sheep should be acquitted of whatever the goat led the sheep to do. So I just look at it metaphorically of guilty versus the acquitted. That makes sense, or don't make sense, or what?
Well, that led me to something, George. When you look at the difference between the two, that coupled with what you were headed towards, and Barbara said, sheep are grazers, and goats are browsers. Goats look for stuff, and sheep just take what they're given. They deal with what's in front of them. So could it very well be that the reason a goat was chosen is because a goat is indeed a browser, and it's going to search for something more than what is in front of it, or more than what's offered to it, wherein the sheep is only going to take what's given to it, and that's what makes them so vulnerable and puts them in a constant state of risk as opposed to a goat. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. And I can appreciate the question because I did not research that. And the reason I did, because I thought about why a goat, but in looking at it from the perspective of Leviticus 16, it specifically said what animals it wanted, or God specifically said what animals he wanted you to use for which sacrifice. And I thought about that, and then my mind went somewhere else on another question, and I never really followed up on that. But yeah, that does make sense.
Well, and
some additional information. Go ahead, Bob.
Go ahead, Bob.
Some additional information. A goat is opinionated. It's independent. It's curious. And it said that the goat herd, the fellow who herds, protects the environment from the goat, but the shepherd protects the sheep from the environment. If that resonates, the goat herder protects the environment from the goat, because the goat will eat just about anything it can get. Will go wherever its curiosity leads it. So the goat herder has to protect the environment from the goat. the shepherd protects the sheep from their own environment. The goat herd is led by the goat, if you can follow what I'm saying, because the goats are going inquisitive, looking wherever, and the herders back behind trying to keep them in sight and in front of them. But the sheep follow the shepherd.
I have something I would in a moment want to offer in relationship to the reason goats were used in both incidents, one as a sacrifice and one as a scapegoat. When you first started, you read, I believe it was from Leviticus, where it talks about the lots being cast for the goat.
Yes, sir.
If you look at the idea of casting lots, it does not necessarily limit itself to casting as in, flipping a coin or casting a lot in that manner. It, figuratively speaking, it also means to make a determination or to make a decision about which one was going to be used. So the process of decision making was left squarely on the shoulders of the priest to choose which goat was going to be used. Now, question being, why goat and not sheep? Well, in both cases, both of them express curiosity, both of them are browsers, both of them will destroy the environment if they are not monitored properly. So if we look at it in the case of the one being sacrificed to the Lord, to Yahweh, is talking about it being offered for deliverance. Is giving up its nature, is dying to itself, and its nature is being changed to one that lends itself to being delivered from its sense of curiosity or its sense of destruction. In the case of the scapegoat, it is given opportunity to be its own deliverer, to go into this wilderness and to forge his way, but at the same time realizing that if it destroys everything, then there's nothing left for its survival. So it learns how to not only preserve, but it also learns how to transform itself into a preserver, and at the same time learn how to transform its environment in such a way that it will be able to sustain it, if we speak of it, in spiritual terms. And so when it comes out of that wilderness setting, it has no longer, the nature of the goat is no longer there. It has more the nature of a shepherd or the nature of a sheep who's willing to follow a shepherd. Does that make sense?
So then, two sides coin then. So the first one being deliverance, is the manifestation of that deliverance the scapegoat?
The scapegoat is the result of that deliverance, yes.
Okay.
And if you look at it in relationship to Barabbas and Jesus, right? The teachings of Jesus are manifested in the transformation of a Barabbas.
Now now I see it. I see it now. Okay. Yeah.
And that's where we are now. We are embracing the teachings of Jesus, and because of that, there is transformation taking place. Prior to that, we were sheep/goats. Sheep in that we were ingesting whatever was given to us without thought. But then when we began to think, we became browsers, searching for something. We knew it was more, but did not understand what the more was. And without the proper herder, or without the proper leadership, guidance, whatever, we could be very destructive in the challenges that we posed to the religious structure, being destructive not just to the structure of religion itself, but also to the sheep who felt like they were grazing on good ground. However, also the teachings of Jesus, the transformation takes place, and that transformation brings us to a place of being shepherds, or sheep being guided by a shepherd, and transforming us into shepherds, which means that we are able to more diligently transform others through teaching, as opposed to being destructive by the way we approach the questions or answers to questions. Can you see that?
I have another question.
Wait 1 second, Evan. Can you see
Yes,
that?
sir.
I just want to make sure that.
Yes, sir. I see it now. It makes sense, and it kind of pulls it all together. I still can't explain it, but I see what you're saying, and yeah. Thank you.
Okay, Evan, I'm sorry.
That's okay. I apologize. So what's the significance of grazing then?
The
Because sheep, yeah.
The idea of grazing is that the sheep doesn't look up. Whatever is put in front of the sheep will eat it. That's why the shepherd has to go into the pasture land or the grazing ground to be sure that there are no poisonous plants there, because the sheep will eat that also. It's not discriminatory at all when it bows its head to eat. The other part of that is that the sheep eat the grass. It grazes so close to the ground until it will destroy the vegetation. That's why it has to constantly change pastures. The goat, on the other hand, the browsing means that it will get up on its hind legs, as Barbara described earlier, to eat foliage from trees, or it will eat whatever is put in front of it. So I'm sorry, whatever it finds, rather, regardless of what it is. So the shepherd, if you take the sheep and relate it to the human in religious settings, that's exactly what's happening. That's why no matter what comes across that pulpit, it can be demeaning, it can be as asinine as possible. It doesn't matter. The people are going to sit there and they're going to say, "That's my pastor." They're going to take it no matter what he says, how he says it. He doesn't have to say anything about the Bible. He can make you feel like a fool. He can make you. He can manipulate your feelings by talking about, like Mother's Day, the sad stories on Sunday morning. He manipulates you by making you get up and stand on your feet, run around. I wouldn't have a God I couldn't run for. I couldn't make noise for. All these things. These are sheep who are eating whatever is put before them, and not really giving any thought to anything. On the other hand, the pastor is the goat, because the pastor eats from anything, from the internet, from what somebody else says, from a commentary, no matter how racist it is, no matter how political it is, in terms of adverse to mankind, it doesn't matter. That goat is going to do that, and that sheep is going to take whatever it is given. Does that make sense to you, Evan?
It does, and my jaw dropped when you said the pastor is the goat.
Pretending to be a shepherd.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
This is Barbara. I have another question based on what Evelyn asked. Does that, and based on what you said, Pastor, about the sheep will follow, does that not imply that not only does there need to be transformation with the goat, but with the sheep also?
Absolutely. The purpose is to transform that sheep into, to transform that goat into a shepherd so that shepherd can become a true shepherd to the sheep. With the right transformation, the sheep eat ingest the right stuff, then that sheep becomes a shepherd as well, which means that everyone becomes Barabbas, recognizes rather that they're Barabbas, the son of Abu. And son, and I don't mean son in terms of gender either. I'm talking about son in terms of a builder, one who lays a foundation and builds upon that foundation for the benefit of humanity. Barbara Jean, is that?
Yes. But back to what Kathy said a while ago about dying, the spiritual dying to self kind of thing. The goats also have a responsibility to start getting a little bit more inquisitive when they are following a goat that seems to be trying to feed them garbage.
Right.
Holding his head up and asking questions and things like that.
And that's when the begins to shear the sheep for his own benefit. Slaughter the sheep. Because he's constantly shearing the sheep for his own benefit. But that's when the sheep gets slaughtered or the sheep leaves the flock. And slaughter is when you are embarrassed by that leadership because of questions that you raise, because of your inquisitiveness. That's when things are thrown up in your face, like you weren't asking that question when you needed my help, or I'm the pastor, who do you think you are? That kind of thing.
So does sheep ever rebel? And what I mean by that is, like we left the setting where we were. So what do you call us?
became an inquisitive goat. And your inquisitiveness led you to a place to find out who you really are. And what you realize is that you're not a goat. You're not a sheep. You're a son of a womb. You're a spiritual being.
Well, in that, Reverend Richard, just to answer Miss Evelyn's question, the thing that you need to know about a sheep can never rebel because a sheep does not have any kind of defense mechanism. If you look at all the mammals that God created, the sheep is the only animal that does not have a defense mechanism. And what I mean by a defense mechanism, a rabbit is agile and quick. That's his defense, or that's her defense mechanism. A lizard will adapt to their surroundings, their change, whatever. If they're on a brown leaf, they're going to change brown. That's a defense mechanism. So a sheep can never rebel. It just can't because it doesn't have a defense mechanism, not that I'm aware of.
Right.
So a sheep is a harmless animal. You know, if you got to go run, if you're running down a trail and someone says, hey, Miss Evelyn, there's a sheep down there. Or someone say, hey, Miss Evelyn, there's a Rottweiler down there. That Rottweiler going to make you back up, even though you didn't even see the Rottweiler, because you know what comes with the Rottweiler. If I say, hey, Miss Evelyn, that sheep down there, you probably, okay, George, I'll be fine. So a sheep does not have any kind of defense mechanism. Like I say, the sheep is always going to be acquitted. The sheep will also be guilty for foul. That's why, if you look at it, I'm a goat. Metaphorically, I'm a goat. There are some people that I lead, and they follow. So, what's that, Red?
Go ahead, George. Go ahead. I just don't want...
And being...
Go ahead.
No, go ahead. Well, don't forget what I said, then you go and say what you're going to say.
No, go ahead.
I just want everyone to know that I ain't got nothing else to say. A sheep cannot rebel. That's all I want to tell you, Mr. Evans.
Okay, and you're right. A sheep
if it doesn't have a defense,
it does not have a defense mechanism. I want us to understand that all of us are sheep, all of us are goats, all of us have the potential to be shepherds. Now, it's a difference. All of us sheep, all of us are goats. We're not potential sheep, we're not potential goats. We are goats, we are sheep. We have the potential to be a shepherd. Does that make sense? A sheep is totally dependent on that shepherd. A goat is not. When we rebelled against the religious concepts that we were being taught by virtue of our questions and our research, at that moment, our attitude was transformed from that of a sheep to that of a goat. At that moment of transformation, we began to recognize subconsciously the potential to be a shepherd. We could be the goat in the wilderness, end up in charismatic setting, thinking we something different than religion. Or we could be a goat sacrificed for the benefit of deliverance, recognizing that we are shepherds, we are brooms. We are the foundation upon which spirituality is built. That sacrifice is related to dying to self, dying to all the religious concepts, something Kathy alluded to earlier. Dying to all of those concepts. If you do not die to those concepts, you remain a goat and in a rebellious state, but at the same time you are leading the sheep to slaughter. You're manipulating them. You are shearing them. In charismatic settings, the sheep are continuously sheared with $60 million jet planes, with the goat being frustrated and buying $500 sweaters and $25,000 Rolex watches, owning 10 or 20 of those, that kind of thing. If you become the deliverance, the goat of deliverance, then those things don't matter to you. The only thing that matters to you is making sure that the sheep recognizes that you don't have to remain a sheep, because you were not created to be a sheep. You were created to be as a groom is. You are the foundation of spirituality in this earth. So when we talk about these, we remove the sight of the animal from our vision and look at the nature of the animal, the nature of the sheep, the culture of a sheep or goat or shepherd. Those are the principles that should be paramount in our thinking and in the way that we process the principles that are presented to us in the scriptures, especially when we look at the idea of a covenant relationship. The covenant relationship, it speaks to the idea of forming an alliance. However, a covenant relationship is much deeper than that, because in a covenant relationship, not only is there an alliance, there it is blood letting that takes place. It is blood mixture. If you in indigenous cultures, when you form a covenant, you cut your finger or your hand, and the blood mixes when you join hands, and that covenant is strengthened when one from my group of people, my unit of people, marries into your unit of people. Now we become one family. That's how deep the covenant relationship is. So, and anyway, I'll stop there for now. Any questions about any of that? Any comments?
Well, Reb and to the rest. Let me cut this water off. Forgive me. Just wanted to add that Reverend Richard is a goat. I'm a sheep. Yet in our covenant, in our relationship, I can ask questions. So if you are a goat and if I am a goat and people are following us, to me it's real important that in the relationship, if you don't agree with what I'm suggesting, you have every right to question me. Now, people that I do lead, they will ask things out of arrogance. Okie doke, you presented a good idea, I want you to work it. If they're not going to work it, it's automatically going to come back to me anyway. So in your leadership, because, you know, one of the mission statements that Reverend Richard and Miss Richard bring forth is they make leaders. And when you're a leader, you're going to be a goat. You got to, and it's very costly when you are a leader, and this is opinionated, it's very costly to be an individual. It's even in the most righteous arena. So in conclusion, I'm a goat, Miss Evelyn a goat, Miss Cassidy, she's definitely a goat. And others are goats. People are following us. Some are following us because they ain't got no other choice but to follow us. Some are following us because they going to use us. They going to get in the carriage and hold the line, and they don't care if the mule go blind. Some are following us because they know we going to need help. So anything I said, Reverend Richard, you don't understand, or I need to take back or what?
I understand what you're saying. If you,
okay, thank you.
Yes, sir. See, this is the thing about the attitude of a goat, or the personality of a goat. And when I saw that things were in the scripture were not as I had been taught, I began to stand on my hind legs and search for everything. I began to forage, to eat the foliage from the trees, the grass on the ground, everything. Why? I'm searching for truth. And I learned over the course of time how to purge of those things that were not beneficial to the journey that I was on. Meaning that learning to purge began a transformation in my attitude. I became more discerning when I would read books or articles or listen to presentations, and could immediately discard based upon the difference in what I was reading or hearing and what was actually in the scriptures. And in doing so, a transformation took place. And coming out of that wilderness, now I come out of the wilderness not as a goat, but I come out of the wilderness as a Christ, as a one who is anointed. I come out of that wilderness as Yeshua came out of that wilderness. Jesus came out of that wilderness knowing that purpose for being in earth is to teach spiritual things so that people can realize who they are. All of these things of transformation takes place in the wilderness, yet the transformation is a continuous process. Even when Jesus came to the realization or embraced who he was brought into the earth to be, there was still transformation taking place. And it's a never-ending process. What I would like to embrace is the idea that when that transformation in this human body is exhausted, then the body is no longer needed. So you exit that body and enter into the realm of the spirit and become a greater influence to those who are still inhabitants of these bodies. Does that make sense to you guys? Any questions or comments?
That makes a lot of sense, Pastor. To me.
Yeah. And honestly, all of us are there. Everyone on this phone, if you are ever going to transform, it's not going to happen in the midst of a group of people. It may start there, but the process of transformation is a very intimate thing. That's when you become one. You're going to become one before you can become a viable many, meaning that you have to be one before you can appreciate being one yet many. And that oneness of it means that you are not only being shown those things that you need to deal with, you need to process through. You are not only being shown those things, but you're also being guided as to how to process through those things. And you will reach a point where you're going to need one other of the many to teach you, to help you, to guide you. And when that takes place, that's when you will learn how to appreciate the many. I never shall forget desiring to go to the seminary with everything inside of me, and in hearing a clarion voice deep in my soul say to me, "I am your teacher." Not really knowing what that meant, but knowing with a deep truth that that's what I heard, and understanding that there was no way possible for me to go. And even when I made an attempt to go, I was told not to come back. So at that point, embracing what I heard and not knowing what it meant, learning later in retrospect that it meant a higher power was guiding and teaching me. And that became a reality to me when I walked into that Jewish bookstore in Wheaton, Maryland. And the rabbi said to me, "I know what you're looking for. You think you were called to be a Baptist preacher, but you are a teacher." And he guided me to some books. And from that point forward, I began to understand and embrace the journey that I had been placed on, not by force, but by choice. And it is my contention that every one of us go through that individual, intimate process before we can truly appreciate being the many. Questions or comments about that? So, Barabbas did not understand the many. He only saw the one. And the one that he saw was himself being a weapon to free his fellow men from the clutches of servitude to the Romans. Jesus, on the other hand, saw the many. And the many that Jesus saw was not only his fellow brethren, his fellow Africans, who needed to be freed from the clutches of the Romans, the Caucasians out of Rome. He saw the Romans needing deliverance as well. And that is why he responded to the centurion, the Roman leader who came to him for help. And when Jesus said, "Forgive them, for they know not what they do," they don't understand what they're doing, he was not just talking to about the Romans. He was also talking about the priests. he was also talking about those who were in cahoots with the priest to bring about his demise in a physical way. So Jesus understood the many, the one yet many, and Barabbas did not and was sent on the journey to understand it. And Barabbas to this day is still on that journey to understand what Jesus was teaching, so that Barabbas could cease its wandering in the wilderness and come from that wilderness and live in the midst of the city of those who truly want to be freed from the shackles of religion, from the bondage of misinformation and chaos. It is up to Barabbas to follow the teachings of Jesus in order for that to come to be. And when that comes to be, that is what we are talking about when we're talking about harmony and balance. Questions or comments?
Pastor,
this.
oh,
Go
go ahead,
ahead,
Audrey. I'm sorry. No, I yield.
I'm still sorting it out in my head, but my thought is that because of the nature of Barabbas is symbolically a goat, and Jesus is symbolically a goat, but it had to be two goats because of the nature of a goat. The nature of a goat is inquisitive. It has a bit of a will of its own. It seeks out, it wants to find out, it wants to search. But part of what I'm thinking, and I want to ask the question is, does the nature of a goat also have to do with free will? And what I'm saying is, in Jesus's case, he didn't exactly give up his free will, but he was willing to bring his will under the control of the Creator, or in line with the Creator. Whereas Barabbas was only thinking about himself, what he wanted, what he saw as the Romans as oppressors, but only thinking about it in terms of how it affects his own physical self. But so question one, so it has to be a goat, whether it's a sacrifice or a scapegoat. It has to be a goat, yes?
Yes.
Or no?
You're
because
right.
of the nature of a goat.
Because of the nature of a goat. However,
Go ahead.
I just will take it a step further when it comes to the will. Jesus yielded his will when he said, "Not my will, but your will be done."
Right.
Like, I've given up my will for your will.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he brought his will in line with the will of the Creator. But Barabbas didn't do that. He just sort of wanted to do what he wanted to do.
Yes.
Okay.
What you bring to mind is this. Just as we have looked at Barabbas and Jesus, I think that it will benefit also for us to look at Judas and Jesus. I don't see Judas as being the culprit that the church has taught that he is.
Okay. Well, I guess my point was just the sacrifice and the scapegoat had to be goats just because of the nature of a goat.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
This is Vermel. I have a question behind Audrey's observation. In the moment that Jesus aligned his will with the Creator, or said, not my will, but the Creator's will, in that moment, he became the shepherd for all of us?
In that moment, he became the teachings for all of us, and yes, shepherd, if we are led by the teachings.
Okay. All right.
Any other
Pastor?
questions? Yes.
I have a question. I was just looking, as we were speaking, I was just looking at the meaning of the word goat, and it looked at it from the feminine and the masculine aspects. And so as I was looking, the feminine speaks to being strong, stubborn, hardening one's heart, and unwilling to yield or change. And it speaks of when they're combined together with the masculine speaks to being fearful, easily led by any storm, or be easily blown, or like in a whirlwind through his fear and all of those things. So as I'm looking at the nature, if I combine those natures of who we were before we began to see who we are, I can see where that is representative of the attitude and the mindset of the goat, even as we're watching in today's society as things are playing out and we see people hardening their hearts and being unyielding and unwilling to change and wanting status quo to remain the same and being willing to do anything but being driven by that fear that this may change it. I may lose my status as to who I see myself as being. I see all of that as the nature of the goat, and I can see that when we talk about the death must occur, those are the attitudes that we're dying to. Those are the things that are no longer important to us. That loving kindness and that oneness and that unity becomes the thing that drives us, as opposed to those energies that tell us to be fearful of losing this or to harden my heart and no matter what, not change my mind. So when I look at it from that aspect, am I seeing that the right way, or is there more to it than just that?
Say it again, Kathy.
Say what again?
Raise that question again with your explanation about the goat.
The whole thing?
Yeah.
Okay, I was just basically saying when I looked at the meaning of the words goat, it spoke to two different things. It spoke to the masculine and the feminine energy at play in each of us. The feminine energy speaks to hardening your heart, being prudent, being stubborn, unwilling to change.
Mm-hmm.
The masculine energy spoke to being fearful and easily led by any whirlwind or any storm that comes along. It drives you. So I was saying, based on when it says there has to be a death that occurs, I'm seeing those characteristics in that part of our nature, that goat nature that's in us, is that thing that those are some of the aspects or the aspects in us that have to die. If I look at it that way, I just ask, am I seeing that the right way?
Yes. Those are the aspects that has to die. Yes. See, they have to die. They are not transformed. They can't birth. You can't. The transformation must take place because the birth can't. What do I mean? The attitude has to be transformed because a goat cannot produce a sheep. If a goat and a sheep mate, the offspring is stillborn if it comes about at all, because of the difference in chromosomes of a goat and a sheep. It just doesn't work. So that in itself tells us that transformation takes place, and the the transformation is being transformed one thing into something different. The transformation is more than what we look at when we see transformation. It's more akin to being a metamorphosis that takes place. Something that is, would you mute your phone, please? Something that is totally different than what it was in the beginning, as in the caterpillar and the butterfly. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Anyone else?
Well, I was going to say, so when I'm dealing with situations and I'm only thinking about myself, am I Barabbas at that time? But the moment I think about what someone else is going through, then I am Jesus.
Yes.
Because normally when we go through stuff, we don't be thinking about nobody else. We really, we just focusing on us, on self. So I'm glad you said that. I appreciate that.
Do you know what you just said? Ask. No,
but I know you'll tell me.
Well, I was, but I'm not now. I'm going to let you figure it out.
I'm listening. I'm waiting.
Regardless of whether you're being selfish or selfless, regardless of whether or not you are thinking only about you, you are still the son of a boom. You are still Barabbas. You cannot get away from that. The question is, are you going to be the son of a boom and have the mindset of a human, a selfish, uncompromising human without compassion? Or are you going to recognize who you are and be the essence of who you are? Meaning that Jesus knew that it was the son of a womb, and it built on that. Built on that by teaching others who they are and the power that's within. Does that make sense? That's what you just said.
Yes, it does. That makes a lot of sense.
Church membership, Christian, Muslim, Hindu, indigenous, colored, white, all these labels are labels that blind us to the reality of our essence. Even the label of male, female, transgender, all that homosexual, lesbian, all these things blind us as to the essence of who we are. Rich, poor, selfish labels. Educated, uneducated, selfish labels. All are devices. And all of them puts us into categories that separates us from each other. When we look at our history, there was a time when we were educated for a purpose. Now we are educated for selfish reasons. Educated for a purpose was being educated for the benefit of the community. A Martha can't read. She places an X for her signature So I have learned to read. So I read a mother's documents for her, explain to her what they mean so they won't take advantage of her. Educated for a purpose. My grandmama sitting there with this preacher reading the scriptures to him. He can't read, but he has one heck of a memory. And Sunday morning when he gets up, he preaches, and they don't know he can't read. And that scripture was read to him on Thursday night, and he preaches on Sunday morning. Educated for a purpose, not for selfish reasons. Building communities for a purpose so that everyone can have shelter. Community gardens so that everyone can eat. Barter system. You kill the hogs and we raise the beans and we share for a reason, for a purpose other than selfishness. Capitalism is selfishness. Period. A system that must create divisions in order for it to survive. We bought into a system that further divided us, and now we must dismantle that system so that the whole of humanity can survive. And the dismantling of that system has to be done with the principles that Yeshua taught, that Jesus taught. Those principles are the only principles that can dismantle the system. And I'm not saying that Jesus is the only one who taught those principles, but I am saying the principles are the only ones that can dismantle the system because they are divine principles for the benefit of humanity. They are not the principles of Barabbas, but yet Barabbas still is the son of a broom. He had the propensity to do the same thing that Jesus did in terms of the teachings, but he chose a different route. Questions or comments?
Pastor Vermel had said something that makes sense. We've gotten so far away from what we were taught. You know, we've gotten so far away from everything. And I don't know about anybody else, but it hurts because you don't know how far you've come away from the truth. So it just hurts because my eyes have been open even more now from what you just said. It hurts. It's like we turn our backs on each other. And I'm not just talking about the African, I'm just talking about mankind in general. We turn our backs on each other, and it just hurts. But thank you for the awakening. Thank you. That's all I can say.
We to believe that. We were indoctrinated to turn our backs on it. We were indoctrinated to be selfish. We were taught to be selfish. We felt like we had arrived. What made us selfish is our desire to be accepted by those who enslaved us. What made us move away from being educated for a purpose to being educated for selfishness is a desire to be accepted. The reason that we embrace church so strongly and the idea of quote-unquote Christianity so strongly is because that's what they accept. When we say we are Christian, they accept. We think we accepted by them. That's what it takes to be accepted. And the very thing that we strive to be so that we can be embraced and accepted and looked upon with favor is the thing that keeps us separated, that keeps us in bondage. The whole idea of being accepted because you're a Christian is diametrically opposed to being accepted, period. That's the bondage of it all. That's a self-imposed bondage. Key words: urban, white, evangelical, urban black, evangelical white, urban settings, black settings. Christianity, no black folk, only white people. When they want it explained. Don't take any thought of the African Christian vote, because it's always the urban or the southern black. Dehumanizing, and we embrace it. The principles of Jesus, the principles that Jesus and the prophets taught, are the principles of humanity that tells us in no uncertain terms, is it not written that I say that ye are God? That's the principle. When we see everyone through the same lens that we see ourselves, when we know who we are, it is then that we change everything in front of us. Any questions or comments? Hearing. A clicking. Any questions or comments? Okay. If there aren't any, then I'm going to ask you guys to look at Jesus and Judas. And let's talk about that. However, we will begin, as always, by asking if there are questions as it pertains to what we just talked about today. Oh, Ron, there was something I asked you to jot down that you raised. What was that? Something.
Let's see. Yeah, I didn't jot it down because I said I remember it. I know what it was. It was I was looking through the scripture, and I kept seeing where it talked about the glory of God, and I thought that was interesting, and I just had a thought on that, but I can't even remember all of the scriptures that I looked at, but I was looking at the glory of God, and it dawned on me that it describes, because you look up glory, it talks about illuminations and being enlightened and something that's magnificent. It also talked about something that is heavy, as in a coat of armor for somebody in a soldier or something being strong and being protected. And I looked at that, and I also was looking at it as being darkness turning into light, and that's what I saw as illumination, meaning that the stuff we study in now, if you look at it just from a religious perspective, we wouldn't be here. You would not see this portion of truth, but glorifying God is uncovering something that has not been revealed before. That is the brightness, that is the illumination, that is looking at something and putting the earth in a place, a cleaner place, a cleansing, a refreshing that it has not experienced at that before that time. So that's what I was, looking at, and we were talking about it Monday night, and somebody mentioned some scripture, and I saw that term, the glory of God, and it just made me think about that stuff that we talk about now, pulling together all the facts and things we've pulled out of the crucifixion, you know, and you can look at that from a religious perspective and just say, okay, he got up early one morning, or after 3 days, and that we've heard that for thousands of years. But when you pull the details out and you look at what actually happened and who's responsible for it, and pull all that together, looking at Barabbas, this has never been revealed before. This type of enlightenment, this type of strength, this type of brilliance and illumination has never been revealed before. So this is bringing that which was dark into the light, and embracing it, and not only transforming yourself, but transforming the earth. That is the glorifying of God, that people are seeing and being transformed into what they are designed to be. So it is increasing the rhythm, the vibrations in the earth, and becoming what that truth defines, and not just looking at things from a religious perspective, not just stopping there, but daring to go forward and desiring to be enlightenment for others. So that's all it was.
Okay. Any questions about that? Thank you, sir. Okay. If there are no questions and no comments, I'll see you guys tomorrow at 11 o'clock.
Hey, quick question for the people in Columbia. I got to go down to Orangeburg, and all this talking about this goat. They got a restaurant in Columbia where I can get some curry goat that someone may be familiar with?
Across the street from Benedict.
Yeah, right across the street from Benedict, correct?
Yeah. Yep.
Okie doke, then. Appreciate you, Rev.
Okay, guys, have a great rest of your Saturday. And as I said, we'll see you tomorrow. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
Talk to y'all tomorrow.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.